Morning. It's beautiful outside. The sky's nice and blue. We've had rain for the last few days, so it's really nice to see some sun coming out. And oh, my hair looks terrible. I've not long. We slept in this morning, so I've sort of not long got out of bed and had a quick shower and cooked some breakfast, and here we are. It's 10 o'clock and I am going to be doing some more scrapbooking, and I'm really pleased that you're able to join us. So please jump on and say hello. Let me know where you're from and let me know, do you scrapbook? Are you watching just because you have an interest in it, or are you a scrapbooker? I'd love to know. I'd love to know whether it's something you've done for a short term or something you've done for quite a while. For me, it's something that I used to do all the time, particularly when my children were little. I was on design teams. I started with other companies doing scrapbooking. I even ran my own scrapbooking business there for a short period of time. But now and then, through renovating, everything got packed up, and now I got involved with Stampin' Up in their card making. So now that they're bringing back more scrapbooking items and really getting into scrapbooking again, because they used to do scrapbooking many years ago, as a friend and I were discussing last night. And it's really good that they're getting back into it. So I am jumping on and reconnecting with my scrapbooking and my love of it. Hello, Vicky. Thank you very much for joining. So let me know. Are you a scrapbooker? Have you been scrapbooking for 20 plus years? Have you been scrapbooking for 1 year or less? Let me know. So let me just turn my camera down and bring up what we're going to be doing today. So as I discussed last week, and I'm just going to play with my desk view here a little bit and just bring this out a little bit. There we go. It was just a little bit too big. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm the same as you, Vicky. I started way before card making. So I'm just going to turn my phone off just so then people don't ring me and we don't get disturbed by that, and pop it over there. Last week I started talking about and started working on an album which is all about me. And now this is a 6x8 based album. And so it's a simple album. But one of the things you do have to realise when you're doing a smaller album, there's pros and cons, and there's pros and cons with everything. Now, what we are basically looking at is a 6x8 page. It's an oversized card. So if you're sort of like wondering where can you find a layout idea, also look at cards, because it's just really, if I grab the card I made in my live last night, yesterday afternoon, there's the two sizes side by side. There's not much difference between the two of them. So the same sort of layout ideas that you might do on a card can be done on a page. You're just swapping what may be your main element and turning it into a photograph with some extras on there to enhance your photo. Now, there are some people out there that love to scrapbook and their elements on their page is greater than the photo. I'm a simple scrapbooker. I'm clean and simple, and I like to have my photos predominant. Now, there's no right or wrong. You know, it's, if you're someone that likes the embellishments, then go for it. If you're someone who wants to have your photos being, up the forefront, then that's okay too. So that's the way I work. Mine are going to be fairly clean and simple. As I said, we're working 6x8. The only thing you do have to be aware of is your photos. You haven't got a 12x12 page, so you can't fit huge number of photos unless you reduce your photos down. Hi, Annette. How are you? Good morning. It's great to have you on here. So think about the proportion of your photos when you're doing it. Now, you can put a 4x6 on a page, but you definitely only put one. I wanted, with this particular layout, to have a lot more white space and just have one simple photo in the middle. Now, the photo we're going to be working with today is a similar size to this one. And we're going to make it, it's going to be 2 pages, and I'm going to this time also add in pocket pages. So this is where you really do have to sort of think about your photos, think about your proportion of your photos. Sometimes you need to print your photos down to these smaller sizes. Now, as I said last week, I have got a Canon Selfie, and really that makes it simple for cutting your photos down. You can put your photos into designated sizes that you want, but you'd want to be very careful that you're not stretching your photo unproportionately. You don't want to, if you're using like other programs, you don't want to sort of be making your photo bigger or smaller, but reducing, like making it skinny. It'd be like looking in a mirror at the show, you know, those mirrors that have the waves, or makes you look fat or makes you look really skinny and things like that. You want to try to keep everything proportionate. So just be very careful when you're reducing your photos that that's what you're doing. If you've got photos that are old and that mean something to you, check out what's in the background. Don't just cut it down to size. And 2, if you are using old photos, maybe better off to scan them and print up copies. That's what I tend to do, so you're keeping your originals original. But always look into the background of your photos and see what's in the background. If there's a car or a pet or something like that from your childhood, you may not want to cut that out of your photo. So just be very careful if you are cutting down photos, what's in your photo and what, is going to, because they're what's going to give you your memories. And the reason why I'm talking about older photos is today I'm going to be using photos that were from my childhood. So I've got this one here. Now, I wanted myself to be in this photo. I also wanted my bike to be in this photo. I didn't want to chop too much of that bike out because it was a predominant part of my photo. It's also got in the background a little bit of the house we lived in and our next door neighbour's house. Now, when this photo was taken, I lived in a town called Woodburn, and we were in a flood zone area. So all the houses, or majority of the houses in town, were built up on stilts. So these houses are all jacked up quite high to be able to cater for the flood waters that may or may not go through. And they survived the floods really well. So there's a lot of memories in that photo, not just of me as a child, but it's me with a decorated bike. Now, if you look at that bike, it's covered in roses. Now, I'm assuming that that photo was taken because my mother did this for me twice when we lived in this town, and one of them was the school centenary. And we had a big street parade, and we had a bike decorating competition, and my mother made all of those roses out of crepe paper and butterflies and decorated my whole bike for me. And plus that bike was actually my mother's bike when she was a little girl. My grandfather fixed it all up, repainted it and gave it to me. So that was my first push bike ever. So that whole photo has a lot of meaning. I'm not just wanting the photo of me as probably about a 9 or 10-year-old. I'm wanting all these other elements. And this is where you've got to be very careful what you're trimming down and trimming out. Now, this particular photo, which is another photo I'm going to be using of me and my mother, I've actually cut a lot out of this photo because this photo was actually a landscape photo to start with. So I've made it into a portrait. I've still got my mother in there, but I've made me a little bit more predominant in this photo, and what was around it didn't matter. So look at your photo, judge your photos before you start cutting them down, and work out what's in there and what are the elements you want to keep. But all of these I've scanned and reprinted because the original photos I want to keep without having to damage it or whatever. So let's get started. So I'm going to pop all that to one side. I'm going to pop my photos to one side. I do also have another photo, which I will show you as we work along. And I'm going to bring in because what I'm working on now is the back of this page here. Now, if you have any questions or anything, please jump on and ask me, because I can tend to sometimes gloss over a few things, and I don't want to do that. So now I may not have all the answers, but you know what? We can all brainstorm, and maybe if I haven't got the answer, someone else who's been scrapbooking for a long time, like Vicky, may have an idea of other alternatives as well. So please jump on and let's share ideas. So I've got a piece of willow white here that I've cut down to my 8 by 6, and we're going to start working on this page here. Now, the whole idea of this, as I mentioned last week, is we're going to be using up our stash. So I'm using up paper from the stash I have, you know, which could have purchased last year or 3 or 4 years ago. It's just getting in and using up what we've got. So some of the products I've got today are current. Some of them will be new. Some of them will be deleted, because it's just looking at what we've got and using what we've got without necessarily having to buy more. So the products I'm going to be using is, I've got some designer series paper, which is from a retired pack. But when I was looking through my papers yesterday, it was actually the best one to use. And this is the mixed up patterns, 12 by 12, the mix-in designer series paper, which I think was in last year's catalogue, because I think last year was the first time they started doing this. So it's just a range of papers, and I know that in the catalogue, current catalogue, they've got the same type of thing. It's just a range of papers in different patterns, colours, that you can intermix with other papers in our range. So it's not any particular theme or anything to this. There's no colour theme or anything. It's just using just designs that you can mix in. And this particular paper that I've chosen to use, that was the front side, which is in a balmy blue. But when I flip it over, the back is a nice little pattern in Daffodil Delight. So that worked out perfectly to use that piece of paper, both sides of it, to do my page for today. So have a look through your stash, pull out what you've got, and let's use it up. The other thing I'm going to be bringing in today is my sentiment, and this came from also a discontinued product line. And this was from the Unforgettable Times, the Mix and Match Specialty Ephemera Pack. And I haven't used much of it. And I thought, well, I've got to start using it today. Last week I made my title using my silhouette, cameo silhouette. But this time I'm going to use a title out of that particular pack there. So I'm choosing Love This, because these are photos that I've got which are telling a little bit of a story about my childhood, and I really do love those photos, particularly the one of my mother and I. I'm also bringing in, let me just grab the stamps and dies. I'm bringing in the dies again. Last week I used this as well, the Bordered in Beauty dies, and I've cut myself some borders using this particular die here. Now I have pre-cut some of this stuff just for the fact that if I sat here and did all this with you, it would take me forever. So there it is there. So I've just cut myself a strip about 1 inch wide, and then on one side I've used that border die because I just wanted a little bit of a lace effect, because these are old photos. So I wanted to give that sort of effect. Now, the die was only probably about 2/3 of this in length, so I did have to line it up and keep going. So just make sure that it lined up really well, but just make sure that you have left yourself plenty of room here, because it was hard to keep it as straight as possible. I had to sort of really hold it down in place with some tape, but it worked out really well. So I've actually cut myself a couple of strips of that, because I'll just keep that in my stash that I'm putting aside with all the products I'm using in this this album, and you never know, it might come again and need to be used again. Now I'm just trying to think, what else have I used? I have also die cut already, and these are all the in colours, because I want to have lots of flowers in this, just to bring back that memory of all those flowers my mum made on that bike. So I've decided to use the Heirloom boutique dies just to cut some lovely flowers here in all the colours, and the leaves in the peaceful pine. So I've done that in all the in colours, and I've just made up, I don't know how many I've got there, but more than what I need anyway. And with some of them, particularly the leaves, I've used both the light and the dark side for my leaves, so I can intermix those in to give a little bit of dimension as well. I'm not someone who likes to use a lot of height in my scrapbooking, mainly because the more depth you use in your products, the more lumpy, bumpy it can. Like in the past, I've known people to put knitting needles onto their pages. Now, if you put a knitting needle onto a scrapbook page, it is, and I'm talking about a real knitting needle, it is going to cause indentations in your pages behind and in front of them. So just be very aware that what you are putting on your page can damage the pages in front and behind. So I like to keep everything reasonably flat. I do like a little bit of embellishments, but again, I'm not going to go too big and bulky with them. I like to keep, sort of everything flat, and you can fit more pages in it, in your album, if you don't have all that bulk as well. So I have already pre-done that. Is there anything else? I think we're time to get started. So let's start working on this page. So as I said, I'm looking at this a little bit like a card, in the fact that this is my card size or my page size, and I have chosen a piece of Designer Series paper, which I showed you before, which is this one, and I have just made it that little bit smaller. So my page is 6 by 8. So this one here is 5 3/4 by 7 3/4. So I've just allowed that little bit of an edge all the way around, because I do want that little bit of white in my page. So let's adhere this down. Now you can use either your multi-purpose glue or your runner. I don't know what it is, but when I make cards, I love to use my multi-purpose glue. I think I'm using it in a smaller area, and I can move it about. When I go to glue my leaves down, I'll be definitely using multi-purpose glue. But when I do a lot of scrapbooking, I like to use my runner. Always make sure whatever adhesives you are using, of course, are acid-free. You don't want damage to come to your photos or the work that you've spent so much time on. So, and your papers also should be acid and lignin-free. So I tend not to use things like wrapping paper or cheap papers from the $2 shop. I want to make sure I've got good quality paper that's not going to turn yellow, because that's what lignin does. And as I said, the acids will actually ruin your photo if you've got papers that aren't a good quality. So that's something I can rest assured with Stampin' Up, that their papers are like that. So once I've positioned that down, so I've just put a little bit of adhesive in each of the corners, and that's going to go down there. I'm not worried about having adhesive all over the top of this. Unlike a card, which people are going to pick up, look at, this is inner protection. If I was doing this as the whole page without a page protector on it, I probably would have used more adhesive underneath that. But for what we're doing, just a bit of adhesive just to hold that down is fine. So I've also cut a strip of the same paper, but this time I'm using my yellow side, and this piece here is cut at 7 1/4 by 2 inches. So I've just cut that down slightly lower, and that's going to go just about there. Now the one thing I do want to do is bring in this piece, my lace type piece, and I want to pop this onto here. Now I haven't trimmed this down to size yet, because I want to work out where I want my lace pieces to start and finish. So I could have it going from dot to dot. Now if I looked at that, if I go to that dot up the top there, okay, I don't know whether you can see that. I'm cutting through that lace part there, and that will cut almost in the same position down the bottom. So that's almost a perfect position. But I'm going to have a look at it if I take it halfway. And I think that's where I'm going to cut this. So I want to have this top of this piece here lined up where those two floral pieces meet in the middle there, and I'm going to be trimming this down to there. So I'm going to glue this down first, and then you'll see probably exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm going to pop a little bit of adhesive. Again, I'm just putting 3 rows. You don't need to, whoops, and there goes my tape runner. I'll pop that one to one side and I'll fix that up later. I've got another one here, and I'm just going to pop another bit onto there. So I'm going to now line this up where I wanted to line it up, and I'm just taking it in a little bit from those dots because I do want that to sort of not to be too crowded in. So I've lined that up, trying to make this as straight as possible. And now I'm going to trim that off. So I'm trimming it in between these two pieces there as much as possible. It may not work out exactly, but it's going to be fairly close. There we go. That's that one. And that's where these little paper trimmers come in handy. And what I'm doing here, don't know whether I can show you, I'm making sure that the edge of my paper is lined up with the metal piece underneath, because I can't take it right up the top unless I flip this over, which you could do, but I'm just feeling there and making sure that that's all lined up, and then trimming that down. And I'm just going to trim this down a little bit shorter because it's probably about 1 mil out, and I don't mind losing 1 mil on the length. But there we go. So I've just had to trim about 1 mil off the length of this yellow piece here. So I'll pop that to one side. And this piece is going to go around about there. So let me just bring in my main photo again, which is this one with my mother. And I have got a mat for this to go onto. Now my photo is cut at 3 by 4, and I've made my mat a quarter of an inch bigger. So it's 3 1/4 by 4 1/4. And again, I'm just going to use my tape runner to adhere that to my mat. And I actually quite like having a mat, and I'm just wondering whether this is going to do the same thing as the other one. Nope. Having a cardstock mat underneath, or willow white mat underneath, rather than just adding a white border on my photo when printing. I don't know, to me, it just looks nice. It looks finished. But that all boils down to personal preference, and it's what is easy for you. Now I've just got this on a little bit crooked, so let's see if I can just remove that and see if I can straighten it up. Whoops. I'm going to flip my paper over because I've just taken a little bit off that. Line it up. This is the beauty of actually using multi-purpose glue. You can have a little bit of slip. Now I'm just finding that my photo may need to be trimmed just a little bit, and I'm just going to take a little bit off where I've got adhesive on this at the moment. I'm just going to take just a fraction off my photo, because I'm just not quite getting the border I want. Making sure that I'm using the right side, because one side I tore a little bit. There we go, that's better. So there's my photo, which I'm going to pop on here. So this is going to go, whoops, this is going to turn around and go the opposite direction. I want that white on that side, and that's going to sit about there like that. So once I've worked out where I want that to go, then we can adhere this down. So I'm going to pop it just a bit of adhesive across here. Now also, because I'm going to be doing this as a 2-page spread and I'm using pocket pages on the other side, also when you're looking at your photos, think about what's going to fit in the pocket pages. Which page is going to be perfect for what you want to do, and also think about then what photos are going to be coming after. So you've sort of got to be a little bit aware of what you're doing, because, and I've done this, where I've pulled out a pocket page, I've thrown all these photos in on one side, it works on one side, and flipped it over to do a completely different layout on the other side, and it's like, oh, my photos aren't going to fit going in the opposite way. So just be a little, like, you've got to plan a little bit ahead. Not a huge amount ahead, but just a little bit ahead so you know what you're going to be doing. So I'm going to now pop that photo down because I'm ready for that to go in. But I'm only going to put adhesive in the center, because just in case I want to place some of my flowers in and around it. Now, the beauty of this particular designer series paper, it has actually got lines, and I'm using those lines of my paper to work out my positioning. Now, I also want to fit, because my title is going to be quite large, and I want to fit it down there. So I don't want to go too far down, but I also don't want to go too far up, because my flowers have got to go in there as well. And I like to work with having a visual border down either sides, a visual border at the top, but having my border at the bottom, my visual border being bigger than what's at the top. And I'll explain that to you in a minute, and I'm going to put that up a bit higher. And I do this with my card making as well as my scrapbooking. So if I grab a scrap of paper here, many years ago I did show card and ticket writing, and one of the things that we were taught in doing that was working within an area where your signs are going to go. So if you can imagine, this is your piece of cardstock, same as what we've got with our photo here. So my visual borders are, I sort of visualize a line coming down the sides, so one on each side, equal amounts. So that might be about, 3/4 of an inch wide to an inch wide, or if it's a card, it could only be a centimetre wide. And I try not to put too much into those areas, okay? Then, you can have overhang, like if you've got flowers overhanging and so forth. Then I try to do the same at the top. So I have a visual border at the top here. But my visual border at the bottom is a lot wider than my visual border at the top. So this here is a lot wider than this one up here. And it means that everything I want to be inside this area here is going to be mainly my photos and my elements. So this area here is going to be predominantly photos, elements, anything that I want people to look at. The further down you drop it down here, what can happen, if you've got something written right at the very bottom here, like a sentiment or something, it can tend to look like it's falling off the page. It unbalances. So not only do you work by thirds, so I also work in a visual of dividing my page into thirds, and knowing, okay, if I'm going to put a sentiment, it's either going to go in this spot or up in this spot here. But I work within the confines of that as well. Now, this, I've exaggerated that a little bit. It wouldn't have to be that deep. It would, you could get it away with it a bit longer. If you go over the edge with a leaf or something like that, it's nothing wrong with it, but it just gives you a bit more balance in what you're doing. So I've created my visual border here by having these two lines down here. There's my line across the top. There's my line across the bottom. So now everything I put in here, I want to be, if I'm going to go over this line here, it's only going to go over it by a little bit. I'm going to have flowers in here, so that's going to bring this line up a little bit higher. But it just gives you a bit of an idea of spacing as well. So don't feel that you have to crowd things in on your page. And this is where you've got to be mindful of your photos, okay? If your photo is too big, then you won't have room for all the elements to go around it. And that's why with this particular album, because it's a 6x8, I'm actually sizing my photos down. I probably will at some stage use a 6x8 photo, a 4x6 photo, but at the moment I'm sizing them down. So I've got a lot of visual area, a lot of area that I can put other elements if I need to. Or even other photos, because you could put a little 2x2 photo, a little 3x4 photo in there in place of, say, this title here. So anyway, that's going to go about there. I'm not going to adhere this down just yet, but I am going to pop that up on dimensionals. So I'm going to do that now. And I'm going to put a few on here, and I may even grab a couple of minis. I want to be very careful about where I'm putting my dimensionals, because my flowers are going to go in and around it, but I might just leave the backing on that one for a little while. And let's just grab some minis and put some minis in there as well. So I do want that to be secure. Oops, they're all stuck together. Okay. So I want one to be up there. So like I do when I'm doing card making, I like to be able to make sure this is going to be adhered down well, but leave areas so I can slip flowers in and around it as well. So that's going to eventually sit just about there. So let's have a look at what flowers I've got. So I've got some leaves. As I said, I've cut them in the two different sides. So I've just flipped it over, same shade, Peaceful Pine, but I've used both the sides there. I've got some larger flowers and some smaller flowers. There were also larger flowers again, but because this is only a small page, I'm keeping it to the smaller ones. So at the moment, I'm just going to grab out two of each one. So I've got two of each one, and I'm going to grab out a few of these backings. Now these, not the backings, sorry, the centers. Some of these I've also die cut on the lighter side and the darker side. And I've also die cut some of these little pieces here, but I've done these all on the dark. So I'll just grab a couple of those out as well. So let's just pop some of these centers in. And because this is a strong color, I'm going to use the darker side. Now you could also layer some of these on top of each other. Get some glue out. Just want to put a little dab of glue there. Just be careful of the amount of glue we use with these, because these have got little holes in them in the die cutting, and you don't want your glue coming out. Now, as I said, you could layer some of these up, so you could put that on top of there if you wanted to have a slightly different flower. You could even, if you wanted to, just very gently give these a little bit of a fold, just a little bit of a turn up. But just remember, once your album is completed and you've got it in a bookcase or whatever, you may flatten these out. So you don't really want to have too much, because it's not going to hang around for too long, I don't think. I tend to like to leave them fairly flat, and I'm going to keep them as two separate flowers. So I'm going to pop another bit of glue in the center there, and use my take a pick tool, might be easier. You could also, if you wanted to, use some embellishments in your center. if you want a little bit of bling in there. But these for me are going to be representing the flowers that my mother, the roses that my mother made on the bike. Whoops. And I'm probably going to do a few more of these because I do have my second page. So I'm just going to pop on these little barely blush flowers. I'm going to use the lighter side of Golden Glow. So there's those, and I'm going to do, I think, probably the smaller ones. So let me just pick out some more smaller ones here. Probably 2 of each to start with, because we may as well get all of these done for the next page as well. Now this page, because it's one page, I am doing quite a bit of work on it, because the pocket pages are going to be much simpler. You know, they're quite small when you're talking about each pocket is either a 3x4 or a 4x6. So you can, you could either just cut your photo at a 4x6 and pop it in, and that's that pocket done, or you can fill up one of those pockets with journaling. But again, if you want to have journaling and a photo in, like, say, the 4x6 one, then you will have to cut your photo down to fit both. Excuse me. Now, I've got a couple more light ones in here. Fish around in here to find. Nope, that one there. Okay, I love the two-tone cardstock because the fact you can flip it over. That's okay, Annette. You have a lovely morning. Thank you for joining us. And I've just got one more to go on here in the dark. There we go. So let's start popping some of these and building this up and working out where we're going to put it. So I'm going to start off with my large blue one, and I'm going to probably pop that just underneath that photo a little bit. So that's sort of going to looking there. Now this is just like a dry fit, and I want to pop a leaf. Now this is where I am coming in on that top part we were talking about, but I mean it's okay to come in, in some points, not necessarily filling the page right edge to edge. I mean, and that's not a hard and fast rule either, it's not even really a rule. If you're doing a collage type thing, then you do want to take your photos or your elements more to the ends of the page. So it's just a matter of working out what you want to do and how you want to look at it. Now, I don't want to cover up my photo too much. I'm going to be covering it up a bit here with my title, but all I want to do really is just pop a few of these around. I could, if I wanted to, bring that out a little bit there and maybe tuck those ones underneath. So that's what I might do. And I might put a dimensional on the back of that one, my big blue one. And again, I do the same as what I do in the cards. I'm only going to pop one in there, and I'm going to glue that down now. So let's just take these out for a second, and I'm going to turn this around to make sure, because I don't want too much of that covering up my mum. So these leaves are all different shapes. So, and then these ones here, I'm going to pop in, and I wanted a bit of colour in this. That's why I sort of like went for this. I wanted this to be sort of light and bright. If you wanted to, you know, if you could have that leaf tucked right in there so you're only just seeing a hint of the other one, which I quite like. So again, I might just pop that one into there. I'm going to put a bit of glue on there. I tend not to like to use liquid glue on my photo itself. But again, that's just what I like. So I'm just using the liquid glue and gluing directly down onto my cardstock. That one's going to go into there. So I'm just going to pop a bit of glue onto that one. This flower over here, I might grab another. So I do like the lighter side. I mean, the darker side is great, and I've used the dark side of the hydrangea hue, but I think I do like the lighter side of the Peaceful Pine with this, because I don't really want, I want the flowers to stand out, not necessarily the leaves. I want them to be there, but because, I mean, using black and white photos too is also very forgiving in the fact that you could put any colours with a black and white photo. And then this one here is just going to go, might just pull that out a little bit more while that glue is wet. And let's just pop another one. Just in underneath there. Now, the reason why I've got those light and then I've left these at full colour is the fact that it just adds that little bit of, that's the darkness I sort of want to have. It's sort of, instead of all of it being the same colour. Now, you may not want to use all of that, so I'm just going to rip that off. So I just want a hint of this colour. I don't want it to overpower it. I think I quite like that in there. So I'm keeping the layout as simple as I possibly can, because I want my photos again to be the highlight. I don't want it to be necessarily taking over. Just going to rip that off. And then this one here, I think I'm going to pop in underneath. I tend to, myself personally, I'm a very symmetrical sort of card maker, scrapbooker. What I have up here, I'll replicate down here, or what I have over here, I'll replicate over there. It's the way my brain works. So again, there's no right or wrong. It's really what's going to look good for what you're trying to show. And this is just building it up. So I'm actually quite liking that. But down here, I want to bring some of those colours down here. Now, I am going to have a second page over here. So I am going to be trying to be very aware that what I want is I'm going to have a focal point here, a focal point there. I'm going to have another focal point over here. So as you're thinking of threes, like when we put down our embellishments, or threes as we're doing a great big scrapbook page, I'm also trying to keep that flow, that triangular flow as well. So down here, I'm just going to do a little bit of a dry fit. I just want to keep these just maybe that little bit smaller and not as big as that one, because this is already taken up a large area. Now you can, if you wanted to, and I haven't sort of planned this, but you could add a white circle. Now I'm just pulling out one I've got from my stash, but it's not from Willow White. This is just basic white. You could pop a circle in there and then build these up onto that if you wanted to, which gives you a little bit of an anchoring point, which actually could look quite nice on this. I think actually I'm quite liking that. I might just grab, see if I've got some Willow White cardstock here, and grab a die. Oops, what just fell over down there? That, let's have a look. What have I got? Can't cut into everything because I do need some of it for, let me have a look. I know I've got some somewhere. I've got to do a clean up in my room here later on today. And I had a crafting night with some friends last night, so I've got stuff everywhere, and then just goes all my phone and everything on the floor. But that's okay. I'll pick them up in a minute. I've got some willow white there. So let's grab that. There is a slight difference between the cardstock basic white and the and willow white. It is slightly different in colour. So that's why I'm sort of like wanting to go into that colour. Now, that circle I've popped on there at the moment is actually from the Stylish Shapes, but I want the spotlight on nature because it will actually may go with, we'll have a look at it, the with that lacy border, but then I don't want to detract either away from that lace border. So let's just have a look. Because we've got this one here, and that's going to be bigger, and I don't know whether I want to go bigger. That's huge. So we might go back to the Stylish Shapes, actually. So bear with me one sec as I go and pull those out. It's slightly smaller. Okay, what do I do with that? Saw my Stylish Shapes there a while ago. So I know they're here. I don't think I picked them up. Sorry, folks, I've just got to... Might just use the one we've already got because I can't seem to find the Stylish Shapes. You know what? I saw them 2 seconds ago. Who else has that problem? It's like you thought you saw something and then... Well, let's go and walk about in 2 seconds. Oh, look, I think I can see them. Okay. No, they're not there. I have got no idea where they've gone to. They were there a few minutes ago. Spotlight on Nature, that's that one. I think I'm going to pop that away because I don't think that one's going to work. And I don't know what I've done with that. It didn't fall down on the floor with everything else. It's not there. Oh, I need to clean my desk. Okay, I think we're just going to stick with that circle. And it'll turn up later. Because I do actually like that circle on there. The only thing I was thinking of making it slightly smaller. But I actually quite like that. What do you think? So I'm going to adhere that, my sentiment, but I'm not going to push it down. I'm just going to adhere it lightly. Because I do want to place some flowers underneath some of this. So that's going to go there, and I'm going to pop so I'm just going to really just decorate this up a little bit. So I'm going to pop a little bit of adhesive on here. I'm going to pop that underneath there, and then this one's going to go and blue is my favorite color, so I'm sort of quite happy to have a lot more blue on this page. So that's going to go. Now I've got to be very careful here how much this leaves is poking out from underneath, because again it's to do with that visual border, but also we don't want it to hang. Okay, let's just try this again. So we're going to have that there. Yeah, this is where this circle could be too big. Because we're popping that, whoops, we're popping that there. I want this to come out from underneath. It's now getting too big. Let me just take this off at the circle again. So I think I'm going to scrap this idea. Let me go back to this, because I love that circle and I love the way it looks, but I think it's going to hinder where I can pop some of these, because I want that to sit out. Trying not to cover up me too much. May even need to come on this side. Yeah, I think that's going to be better. I think that is going to be much better. Even though I did like that circle on there, and I do feel like it gave it a bit of grounding, but I like the colour coming through from underneath as well. And I don't want to have too much on here. Some ways I wish there was some little flowers that are slightly smaller than this, but actually I'm thinking that could be enough. I'm actually liking that. I like the simplicity. Now, I am going to add some embellishments to that, but I do want to get to the pocket page. So let's bring in the pocket page I was wanting to use, which is the one with the 4x6 at the across the top and the two small ones. Now, this page won't take as much because we're smaller in room for embellishments. We've really only got the piece across here and these two little pockets. Now, I've got some pieces here pre-cut, and I've got the other two photos I want to use. So just working out where is my... So I've got here a piece of white, which I've cut to the 4x6, which is going to fit into that pocket at the top. Let me just make sure. So that's going to fit into that top pocket. And the photo I want to pop on there is going to be this one here. Now, this one here, I'm with my favourite doll at the time, and her name was Patsy Ann. And I do have a bit of journaling in that I want to put in on that. So I have decided I haven't done my journaling as yet, but I've got a piece here of just basic white, willow white, and that's going to be my journaling card. So I'm going to pop that in there now. I will eventually pop some of these flowers here on top, but what I'm thinking of doing is actually only adding flowers. I'm going to add the flowers to my pocket, so I'm not going to actually add it to that card. So it's going to go to here. Now, remembering I'm wanting to keep a little bit of a visual triangle happening, so I want to have some on here, but I've got to remember these photos here. This photo here is I'm facing that way, so I don't want to pop that too far over there. I'm sort of wanting to have it across there. Then this one here, which also I'm facing that way, I'm going to pop into this pocket just here. So I've also got a piece of designer series paper, which I have just made a fractionally bigger, and I have got another piece of basic white, and I'm going to pop those onto there like that. So I'm sort of still bringing in that blue from here across over to here, but it's just a smaller amount. So I'm going to do that one next, because that is going to be that then done. And because I've got white cardstock here, I am going to use my glue on this one. As I said before, I don't necessarily like putting my glue directly onto my photos or my photo backs, like my liquid adhesive, but I don't mind putting it onto my designer series paper. It's just, I don't know, it's just a hang up I have. No rhyme or reason, just what I do. I just want to have a little bit of slip to make sure I'm getting these nice and even. So that's how simple it's going to be to do that page there. And then that's going to slip straight into there. So these flowers could even come into this position here. But it's not going to be too many, because, again, I don't want to cover up my bike. I just want to give a hint of colour to go across there. So this is where I'm heading with my ideas, but I haven't glued anything down as yet. So if I do embellishments on particularly these two pockets, it's going to be on the outside. So it's actually going to be touchable from the outside here. So that's my journaling and my bottom pocket. Now I've got this one up here. So the idea I had for this one, I've got a piece of designer series paper. I'm just going to move that out of the road for the moment. And I was thinking of popping that onto there and that photo there. So again, I'm bringing in that blue. I'm tying all those photos, all those elements on my page all together by using the same paper. The other thing I could have done, or what I could do, is even bring in the yellow and have it, which actually that could look quite good, because that's bringing in that yellow again, because I've brought the blue in down here, and that's bringing in the yellow there, because I was thinking of adding a strip. I've got a little strip here of the blue. So let's have a look and tell me what you think. Do I add that there and then a strip of the yellow and that? And then my flowers were going to come into this section here, because I could have trimmed that photo down quite a bit because I've got all this grass, but I actually quite liked the layout of these. My father took all these photos, and he was doing photography a lot at the time. So that was sort of like my thinking, of course, with some green. And I actually quite like that. I think with the yellow, a little bit of the yellow rather than the solid yellow, I think that's going to actually look. So that page is going to look like that, roughly. Maybe not so much that one, but that could go across there like that, or even just want a little bit here. Okay, I think that's what I'm going to do. Now I could, if I wanted to, use this second piece here and trim that piece down and put a little bit of that there. That might even work as well, because then that's bringing that white across. I think I like that. Okay, let's have a look. Let's adhere these down. Let's pop all that over there. Let's adhere this piece down here onto this one. So my base, my willow white, is a 4x6, and then I've cut my designer series paper down to 3 3/4 by 5 3/4. So just taking that 1/4 of an inch off. Now I'm going to glue this piece down first. So where's my runner? Again, lining it up where I want this to go. So I'm trying to keep the same sort of distance as before. That's fine. And then let's trim this down. Now this one's going to not work as well in the fact that I haven't got the same distance at the top and bottom. So let me just see. I might be able to trim this down a bit more. So I've made this slightly smaller, and I think it's still going to work. And this piece here is 2 inches, but I'm going to cut it down to 1.5. So I'm just going to trim a little bit of that off, and that's going to go to there, the same as the other side. And then that's just going to go into there. So it's just going to give that hint of that on there like that. So just to tie those in. So let's pop that down here. So I want that probably to go about there. And I want that to go at roughly about there. Okay, so let's just bring in some of these, because I'm looking at now trying to work out where these flowers are going to go. So I do want to have some of that green there. And I could bring in another large flower about there possibly. Take a little bit of that off so much off the flower, of the photo. So that there's not looking too bad. And Probably actually need to bring another one of these little pink ones in. Let's just have a look. No, I don't like that as much. I do like that. Okay, so let's adhere these down. I'm going to pop that one there. Now this one here I want to pop up on a dimensional. Whoops, don't need that backing there. I think I might even bring that one down into there because I don't want to pop the glue on there. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of glue on those, that bottom edge there. And have that coming there like that. Now, do I have any more of these? Just wondering whether... Again, I'm just going to tear a bit of that off and just bring in a little bit of this darker greenery in there. So I'm actually quite happy with that. So that can go. So I'm trying to keep all of this flowing from one page to the other. And when I was choosing my background papers, I wanted something that was going to be subtle enough that was going to let the flowers and that and the black and white photos to jump. So now we've got that, and I really feel I need to do a little bit more down here in the Barely Blush. Again, I don't want to hide that bike too much, so that's going to be too big. If anything, I think I'm just going to keep it it's a dark corner down there. I can bring that leaf right over. Because I'm not hiding the bike. I'm really just hiding that dark, really dark corner there. But I just want to bring, because I've got that colour there, and I just want to bring a little bit down there. But the big flower is just way too big. It's just going to hide everything. I don't really want to put too much on here because I do want to do my journaling onto there. So I think what I'm going to do is adhere those two together, and that's going to go fairly close, covering a lot of that leaf up. And then on the back of that, I'm going to use my snail because it's going, if I use my multi-purpose glue onto my sheet there, it's going to slip too much. So by using just my glue, and I want to put quite a bit of this on because I want this to be secure, using a dry glue such as this is going to work well. So that can go there. So that's sitting on the surface. So don't be scared about sitting things on the surface. Even putting your if you were doing journaling strips, you could put that on the surface. I may do a little bit of a trim of one of these colours in here, like, sort of a longer piece, just a trim. Because I haven't worked out my journaling as yet, it could even be that I may even add, another flower like up in here, because this is on the surface. I could actually even add another flower into there, and do it on that surface. Actually, that wouldn't look too bad. So again, these are underneath. I mean, I could have put these on top as well, but don't mind this. Even coming down a little bit onto that. Still, so I've got access to that pocket, because I don't want to block that pocket up. So that's what I've got to be a little bit aware of. I need to have access into there to pull that in and out. That doesn't look too bad there. Now, the only thing that I do want to add to this, and this is going back into my stash, oh, I need to clean this up. This is all getting a bit messy. I've just got embellishments thrown everywhere. I think my box is getting too small. I do want to add some little brass butterflies. There we go. I knew I had some. And that will also pick up with this gold here as well. So I'm just going to add a couple of up here. So I want to add one there. I'm just going to use my take a pick tool, I think. And I want to add definitely one there. Just turn that around. And I might add another small one there. So I've got 1, 2, 3 there. Then I do want to add one there and a small one there and another small one. Whoops, I managed to put 2 on that. Gee, how did I manage to do that? So let's pop that back in. Apparently this doll, her name was, as I said before, Platsy Ann, because she had 2 big long plaits. Mum and Dad had taken me to the local church fete, and I saw that doll. I was about 3.5 as we walked in, and I pinched it. So Mum and Dad took it back, and as we were leaving this church fete, I pinched it again. So I think by that stage they thought they'd better buy it for me. So that's how I ended up with that Platsy Ann, and she was a huge doll. She probably wasn't that much, when you stood her up, she wasn't that much shorter than me, and she was well loved for many, many years. But she was all fabric, handmade, with a dress that many times came on and off, and an apron. And she was very, very well loved. So that's the story behind my Platsy Ann. So there we are. There's my layout for today. As I said, I still just have a little bit of journaling. I could add a little bit of florals on there somewhere, but I just want to leave it and see how much journaling I can fit, because I do have a couple of stories there. One about the fact that my mum used to decorate my bike for special events with handmade crepe paper roses, and my story about Platsy Ann. So there's me as a child. So this is, again, this album is all about me, and hope you can come back next Saturday, and I will have another layout, something to do with me. As I said, a version of this particular flyer, which I'm using as my guide, is actually on my blog, last week's blog post. So that is there for you to access if you want to grab that for yourself to create one of these albums. But it is, it's quite fun doing a small 4x6. So don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of grabbing your pocket pages also. It's great now that Stampin' Up have got the 6x8 larger page protectors for this album. So, and by the way, I don't know whether you realise, but this actually fits in your 12x12 album as well. The ring spacing is perfect, and I've used these 8x10s to put a brochure in, which was an A5 brochure. So worked really, really well. But anyway, so there's the next two layouts for my album. So next week we'll probably be looking at me a little bit further on in life. So take care. Thank you again for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you do want to purchase any of these products I've got today, remember some of the products I've used are discontinued. Some of these products, I haven't checked, but some of these products could even still be on the I can't think now what it's called, but the last chance pages. So go and have a look there, particularly this particular paper here. It may be on there. But have a look at your stash, see what you've got. Rather than going out and buying more product, let's use some of this up and let's start creating an album on ourselves. Just because we do it on everybody else, we should do one for ourselves as well. So take care. I'm going to now go back in and do some housework, but please let me know what you think in the comments. I'd always love to hear what you have to say, and there's a lot more ideas I have got coming for this album. So stay and work along with me. So bye for now. Take care.